And we're coming to you live for the Built Ford Tough Studio. Boomer Esiason, Greg Giannotti. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan. Simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network. And wherever you are in the free Odyssey app, good Monday morning. It's amazing how it can all end so quickly. We watched it happen very quickly with the Knicks. We watched it happen very quickly with the Rangers. They win their first 7 playoff games. They have this amazing Chris Kreider game to finish off that series. They're up 2-1 against the Florida Panthers, and then 1, 2, 3 losses in a row, and it is all over. And the Florida Panthers were more physical. They were the better team in this series for a majority of the series. You don't feel like the Rangers, at least I don't feel like the Rangers blew this series. I feel like they got beat. And I know that you don't want to have a tip-of-the-cap situation in sports all the time, but that's sort of the way I feel about it. They're favored in the Stanley Cup final. They're going back to the Stanley Cup final, the Florida Panthers, after being there last year, and the Rangers ran into a team that they couldn't beat. So I'm curious to see where the big fella's mind is at this morning after this one. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Good morning, G. A lot different than I was last year. Last year, I was pissed. I was pissed at the coach. I was pissed at the players, and I really felt that they let their fan base down. I really did. You're up 2-0 on the Devils, and you make no adjustments. You come out flat. You don't play well, and you end up losing a series in which you should have won, even though the Devils had home ice advantage. And I was livid last year. I really, really was. Now, yesterday I just took it easy. I listened to the station. I read everybody's opinions. I've heard it all. And I can't argue with anybody's opinion that may call in this morning and say, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this. I mean, look, you said it right. The Florida Panthers were a better team. I told you before that series started that this was going to be a bitch. This is going to be another heavy team, much like Carolina. They play very similar. They have top-end better players maybe than Carolina, maybe with the exception of Brett Pesce, who was not playing in that series against the Rangers, so the Rangers caught a break. And the Rangers were in every single one of these games, but I felt like for 6 games that the Rangers were skating uphill the whole time, and the Panthers were skating downhill, and the Rangers just could not handle the sustained pressure in their defensive zone. So when I think about this season, first of all, I want to say it was must-watch TV for us as Ranger fans. We couldn't wait until the next game started. And I think back to the beginning of the year, how Jonathan Quick saved the season. Jonathan Quick was amazing. He saved the season because Igor started out, in a slump. I don't know how else to put it. And Benoit Allaire got him straightened out. And then Igor went on this magical run, and he was incredible all the way until the last game. He never really had a bad game in the playoffs. There was never, one of these games where he gave up 6 or 7 goals or that he had to get pulled in the middle of a game. I mean, he was steady, he was consistent, he was battle-tested, and he busted his ass, and he kept us in every single game. And I've heard a lot of, if Igor wasn't the goalie, the series may have been over in 4. And many people who feel that way, are probably right, because the MVP for the Rangers this season, while Panarin had 112 points and Vinny Trocheck had a great season and Lafreniere started to blossom and the power play was amazing all year long and 5-on-5 hockey wasn't that great. It was a little bit of a slog. Igor was there for the 3 quarters of the season and in the playoffs. So I appreciate the fact that we got this far in the playoffs. I appreciate how hard they played, how much joy they brought us. And it's unfortunate that it ends at this level because the farther you go, the deeper the cut is and the more you hurt as a fan.
Well, yeah, and also you really thought that this team was good enough to win a cup because, you did at one point. All of us did, I think, especially with the way that they had played early on against the Carolina Hurricanes. So, they were the best team in the regular season. That meant something.
Yeah, no, it means a lot. And, and by the way, hockey in the playoffs is different than hockey in the regular season, and we all know that. They say the ice gets smaller, the hits become more frequent, people are either taking those hits on and making plays, or they are flinching. And as much as many Ranger fans can't stand PK Subban on Saturday night was exactly right when he was talking about his criticism of the New York Rangers and how they were playing in this so-called desperate game. And some of the players that they pointed out, and I appreciate this, they pointed out guys that were turning away hits, guys that were not laying the body into somebody like Chris Kreider, and how Jacob Trouba is making these decisions that are mind-numbing, that make no sense. And, you can understand they got frustrated, I think. And at the end of the day, the better team won. There's no question that this was not lost on penalties not called or anything else other than the other team wanted it more and they were better. And their stars, while they didn't score a lot of goals, they scored goals, but they created so much havoc. And that havoc, unfortunately for the Rangers, they couldn't handle it. Now, I will say this. What wins championships?
Defense wins championships.
And what have I been saying about this defense, in particular this series?
That they have been a mess, and they haven't helped out Igor. They have been a liability. They lose all the puck battles. You feel like there's a bunch of guys just standing in front of Igor with no Ranger defenseman doing anything about it, and it has been very disconcerting for you.
It's amazing when I see how the penalty kill of the Florida Panthers evolved during this series. In the one game in which the Rangers did win, when I believe the Rangers won it, Trocheck was in the high slot because they were so spread out. And you could see the adjustments after that goal that Trocheck had, that they were going to pack them all back in, and they were all tight. They were all, they're big, they're strong, they got, very good stick work in front of their own net. They know how to get their skates in the way. And I just thought that their adjustment by Paul Maurice in that regard was, hey, guys, we're not chasing. We're not going to be overly aggressive unless, we feel like we see a bouncing puck and we can go get it. But after that Trocheck goal, their penalty kill changed to be a little bit more compact, and the Rangers really had a hard time with the cross-ice passes. Mm-hmm. The cross-ice pass, I think there were two. I think one Panarin threw over and Trocheck threw another one over, and both were easily intercepted by Barkov and easily cleared. And, that's on the players. I mean, the players got to know you can't do this when you're playing against a team that's quite this good. But to go back to the defense for a second, it's a five-man game, and you got to be defensive-minded on, the front line as much as you are in the back end. And the back end decision-making was atrocious. I mean, I don't know. I think, Matt Rempe had an impact on this team to the point where it impacted Jacob Trouba. Like, he wanted to kill people out there, and he wasn't playing sound, solid hockey. He took himself out of position a number of times, and when he did, the puck ended up in back of the net. And I hate to pick on one guy, but it was so obvious, and he took so many penalties. If you remember in that first series against the Capitals, went flying into the boards head first. I mean, I love that. I love the attitude, and I know he wants to win, and I know he wants to lay it on the line, and I know he was trying to lay big hits. But those decisions that he made ended up a number of times with the puck in the back of the net, which is really has got to be concerning for Chris Drury. Now, the thing about all of this going forward is kind of like where Florida was 2 years ago. They were the President's Trophy winner.
Yep.
I think they lost in the second round, and their GM decided, we got to do something. We can't win with this high-flying offensive, beautiful team that can skate better than anybody, can pass better than anybody. We have to do something. And they traded away two of their stars, and that was Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau to Calgary to bring Matthew Tkachuk to Florida. That was a major move in the offseason by Florida at the same spot where the Rangers are right now. So the question is, what are the Rangers going to do moving forward? And you have 13 players on this roster with term, meaning they have significant contracts, and with the exception of maybe, Miller, Jones, Igor, and Quick all have one-year deals. Lafreniere has 1 year left on his deal. Everybody else has got 6 years, 3 years, 3 years, 4 years,
which makes it more difficult to
right. And they have big contracts. The other thing too is they also have a list of restricted free agents, and those restricted free agents are Kakko, Lindgren, and Schneider. And quite frankly, I think Schneider got better as the year got on. He ended up getting elevated to the number one pair. So out of all of these players, if you want to move any of these players, who are the players that are the most enticing for somebody to make a trade for?
Capo Kakko.
Well, yeah, but he's not going to be enticing. I mean, the
Rangers,
Rangers are going to dump him. The Rangers are going to get rid of him, and they're not going to get much in return for him.
But I mean, enticing in the sense of, all right, you're not locked into a ton of years with the contract, and also he's a young player who has never reached,
and he's not going to demand much.
Right, and he's also someone who there's still upside there because he's a younger player that maybe someone can unlock that he hasn't done. So enticing in that way.
Yeah, but the only this really, if you ask me, there's one enticing player, and that one enticing player happens to be Chris Kreider. Now, he may have a no-move clause or no-trade clause, but it probably converts to a 15-team no-trade clause this offseason. I don't want to see him gone, but if you are going to do something drastic, do you break up Mika and Kreider? Because, Mika's got 6 years left on his contract. Panarin's got 2 years left on his contract. Kreider's got 3 years left on his contract. Hedl has 3 years left on his contract. Trocheck, 4 years. Lafreniere is 1 year removed from RFA status, so he's
not going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere. No, he's got a contract for next year. Goodrow has got 3 years left on his contract. And what did we find out about Barclay Goodrow? He does all the dirty work. He does some quality things, and and quite frankly, he's bounced around all over the place. He can't find a home. They can't find a right wing for Mika and Kreider. They've tried like 19 different guys, and nobody seems to stick there. So while I am disappointed, for sure, I had a great time this season. I enjoyed it. Was appointment television. And you know who else is appointment television right now?
The New York Yankees.
100%. This is Yankee fans are feeling how Ranger fans felt as the season moved on. You see a lot of great things out of your stars, and everybody's showing up, and Juan Soto has been a major difference. And, I would, if I were a Yankee fan, I'd be just as excited as I was being a Ranger fan. Now, the question for the Yankee fan is it World Series or bust? Or when they get into the playoffs, are they going to run into somebody that may beat them? I don't think in an elongated season.
I do think that question has a lot to do with, and it's an answer we're not going to know, is Juan Soto going to be here past next year? And if like I said, we're not going to know that answer until the offseason. But if we could look into the crystal ball and know that answer, then if he's gone, then it is a World Series or bust year. If he's not and he's staying for a number of years and you feel like you can capitalize on Judge and Soto and the rest of this roster in the next few years. But those two guys together, man, if it's just 1 year, you can't waste it.
That's right. You got to go and win now. And the other thing that, has been talked about is about not wasting Igor Shesterkin's prime years. Much like many Ranger fans feel that, Henrik Lundqvist, we had this great goalie, but we could just never get there because we never had the right team. And this team, as good as it was, reminded me of the team that lost to the L.A. Kings in the Stanley Cup Final. The L.A. Kings were bigger and faster. Now, there were some screw-ups when it came to, goalie interference calls or non-calls. But at the end of the day, to me, it was very similar. And I remember how disappointed I was, not only for Henrik, but for the entire team and for the entire fan base when we lost to the Kings that year, or when we lost to the Devils, in their building. And I'm sitting behind the goalie where the game-winning goal is, shoved in. And then the Devils go on to the Stanley Cup Finals. So there's been a lot of disappointment for sure. I'm not going to come in here and scream and yell like I did last year, because last year it was brutal. This year it was appointment watching television. That's all I know, and that's the same thing with the Rangers. One other thing I will say about the Rangers and contracts and what I think they should do. What I think they should do, Igor has 1 year left on his contract, which is amazing. So he's got 1 year at about $5.6 million. I would go to him right now and try to do an extension. And I would try to, buy out this last year, give him a raise for what he did in this playoff series, and solidify him for the next 5 or 6 years.
Now, is that something that you think he'd be willing to do, or is he someone that's going to bet on himself next year and hit the open market? I mean, I know that with hockey guys are a little bit different than some of these NBA guys that are definitely want to get to that next year and make the more money. But, I mean, I would hope that he'd be open to it.
Yeah, Jonathan Quick is here for another year, so he'll have the same backup regardless of what he decides to do. But if I were the Rangers, I would try to go to him. And, this is a hard cap sport, where the cap really does matter, and you got to be really, really careful about how you're paying certain guys. And you just take a look at some of these, these deals. Like Mika's got 6 years at 8.5, and Kreider's got 3 years at 6.5. And I love those guys. Those guys are productive in the regular season. Even Panarin, who had 4 game-winning goals during this playoff run, yeah, he disappeared. You know why? Because they made him disappear. That was Paul Maurice. That was their defensive structure, and they are a hard, heavy team that makes it difficult for Stars. What's going to be interesting is that they're going to be playing the Edmonton Oilers, who won last night with 10 shots on goal, by the way.
It's crazy.
And they beat the Dallas Stars, so now it's Edmonton and Florida. Now, I guess that's good for Canada because all Canada will get around a Canadian team. I don't know how many people in America are going to be watching this.
I will not be. You'd have to hold me hostage and force me to keep my eyes open to watch that series.
So the other thing, too, about the Edmonton Oilers, you know who they're coached by? I think I told you this before. I don't know if you remember.
No, I have no recollection of that.
So they are coached by a guy by the name of Chris Knobloch. Do you know where he was at the beginning of this season? Because he was a replacement in the beginning of the season. When
Working on his throws from second base to first base?
No, he was I appreciate that. He was actually the coach of the Hartford Wolfpack, who is the Rangers minor league affiliate.
That's right.
So at least
How about that?
One Ranger's going to be, in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, very good.
Which
Congratulations to him. All right, so we'll get Jerry in here in a couple of minutes. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network.